Think about your day. You wake up and check your phone. You turn on the microwave to maybe heat up your coffee. You turn on the TV to check the news. You go into your car. You push a button to start it. You need to wash your clothes. You need to wash your dishes. You go to the bank. What do all these things have in common? They all use a microchip. Behind these small pieces of silicone, there is a global power struggle that you may not know of, a competition between countries that could decide our future and the future of the world economy. The experts call this the Microchip War. I'm Mikael, and this is what I learned today. So let's start with the basics. A microchip is a small piece of silicon that acts like the brain of any modern device. Each chip has billions of tiny transistors, small switches that control electrical signals. So to give you an idea, the chip inside your smartphone can have more than 10 billion transistors, smaller than a virus, all working together. Every year, the world produces around 1.5 trillion chips. Now, that's more than 190 chips for every person on Earth. And they're used in everything from PlayStation, laptops, to airplanes, cars, robots, and missiles. When there's a problem with microchip production, the whole world feels it. They recognize it. For example, during the COVID pandemic, car factories stopped working, phone production was delayed, and the prices of all these products went up because of the microchip shortage. This shows how deeply modern life depends on these invisible parts. In fact, some economists say that microchips are the new oil, the most valuable and strategic resource in our modern day. The story starts after World War II. In the 1940s and the 1950s, scientists in the US invented the transistor, a small device that replaced mostly large mechanical parts that allowed machines to think faster, right? This led to the birth of the microchip. Companies like Fairchild Semiconductor and Intel in California and Silicon Valley became pioneers. At first, chips were mainly used by the military and NASA for missile and space programs. The US government invested heavily in this technology because they gave them a huge advantage during the Cold War against the Soviet Union. In fact, many historians say the US won the Cold War not only with weapons, but better technology, better microchips, because American missiles and computers were far more accurate and reliable. By the 1970s, computers were entering homes and microchips were everywhere. The US predominantly dominated the industry. It made nearly 80% of the world's microchips, but this would soon change. In the 1980s, Japan entered the game with cheaper and more reliable chips. Japanese companies like Toshiba, NEC became leaders in memory chips. The US started losing market share and feared losing its edge. Then came South Korea with companies like Samsung, SK Hynix, which today are among the top memory chip producers. But the biggest change came from a small little country called Taiwan. In 1987, an engineer named Morris Chang, who had worked for a company called Texas Instruments in the US, founded TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. TSMC focused on one thing: making chips for other companies. This changed everything. Today, TSMC produces around 90% of the world's most advanced microchips, including the ones used by Apple, Nvidia, and the US military. Its machines can print patterns smaller than a nanometer. That's 50 times thinner than a human hair. Now, of course, China also saw the importance of these microchips, and now it imports more semiconductors than oil, spending over $450 billion a year on microchips. To reduce this dependency, China launched Made in China 2025, a plan to become a global leader in microchip production. The government is now investing tens of billions to catch up to the rest of the world. But it still depends on foreign technology, especially from the US and Taiwan. This is where things become a little more serious. Microchips are not just a business thing anymore. It's a matter of national security. They control fighter jets, nuclear systems, AI, and cybersecurity, which means that whoever controls the microchips can control the future of warfare and the digital economy. The US is still strong in chip design. Companies like Intel, AMD, and Nvidia lead the world. But most manufacturing happens in Asia, especially in Taiwan and South Korea. That makes the US very vulnerable if something happens in that region. The biggest fear is that China could invade Taiwan, which would give it control of the world's most advanced chip factories. That's one reason the US passed the CHIPS and Science Act in 2022, a law that made investing over $50 billion to build new chip plants at home, including giant new factories by Intel, TSMC, and Samsung in the US. At the same time, the US has used its power to block China from getting advanced chip technology. It banned companies like Huawei from buying US-made chips or software. Some experts call this weaponized interdependence, when countries use their control over global supply chains as political weapons. Now, you might ask, Mikel, what does that have to do with me? And you probably know the answer to this question, but, well, everything. Chips are in your phones, your Wi-Fi, your credit card, your car, your medical devices. For example, during the 2021 microchip shortages, car makers like Ford, Volkswagen had to stop production. The price of new electronics went up everywhere. Hospitals had problems getting medical equipment that used microchips. And it's not just about production, about products, it's about jobs and the economy. A disruption in Taiwan could cause a global recession, because the entire digital economy depends on that little island called Taiwan. So yes, the microchip war might seem very far away, but it can affect your life, your wallet, and hell, our future. Experts say we're entering a new technological kinda Cold War. The US and China are both investing billions to control chip design, production, and artificial intelligence. This could reshape global alliances, and countries may be forced to choose sides. But there's another possibility. This competition could accelerate innovation, right? Just as the space race in the 1960s led to new technologies, the microchip race might lead to breakthroughs in quantum computing or AI and energy efficiency. However, the risk is high. If political tensions grow, especially around Taiwan, the world economy could face serious disruptions. Some experts call this China's Sputnik moment, when the US realized it was behind in space and rushed to catch up. Now it's China's turn to accelerate. Huawei, even under US sanctions, continues to spend billions on research and recently produced a 7-nanometer chip, a sign that China's innovation is advancing fast. So, what do we take away from this? Well, we know that microchips are super important. They power everything. The world depends heavily on a very fragile global supply chain, especially Taiwan. The US, China, and Taiwan are the technological and political competition that affects the whole planet, so we have to keep paying attention to that. A crisis in the microchip industry could hit the global economy harder than an oil crisis, and that the future of this war will not only lead who leads in the technology, but who leads the world. So the microchip war isn't about machines, it's about who controls the future. So now remember, the next time you touch your phone, remember that the tiny chip inside is part of a global story of power, politics, and progress. Guys, stay informed, be vigilant with the information you get, and understand that sometimes things are more complicated than they appear to be. I hope you learned something. I'm Mikel, and this is what I learned today. Bye.